This is a special double episode of Back to One. Laura Donnelly's episode is first, followed immediately by Ann Skelly's episode. Why are they both together back to back on one episode? Because they star together in the new HBO series, The Nevers. Why am I talking to you at the beginning of the show? Well, I just don't want you to turn off your podcast player after the first episode because you'll miss the Ann Skelly episode. Don't do that. That's all. Thank you.
Lots of people weren't going to see it. It wasn't going to suddenly change my career, or it didn't feel like it was going to do anything other than just affect me as a person and as an actor. And that suddenly I found myself 100% fulfilled just with that. And I realized that that's all I ever needed to do. I didn't need to go trying to think in the long term of a career. I didn't need to think about what kind of actor do I want to be? How do I want to be seen? In that moment of being so immersed in this beautiful, beautiful play, and we were only creating it for its own sake, and we were all just living in that dreamland for a while. That's where I found myself completely fulfilled and happy. And I realized that as long as I only went to work looking for that whatever else would fall into place would. It was kind of at that moment I stopped apologizing for seeing myself as an artist, and stopped apologizing for taking myself seriously as an artist, and actually began to accept that, you know, maybe I was that person rather than trying to be that person.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Laura Donnelly is an actor. She sat down with me in cyberspace to talk about the work. Do you have a typical way that you like to begin your preparation process for a role?
I think I do, but I'm not sure each of the processes have actually been that similar. I get a lot of it is just following breadcrumbs. I mean, there's the basic stuff of like, what research do you need to do into how that person's life would be? Any historical research you need to do. Obviously, there's accent stuff and trying to figure out what might be different about their physicality. And I always have like a notebook that I start off with at the beginning of each job, thinking that it's going to be filled with information. And, you know, that can be music. It can be, you know, I've had ones where it's like I'm learning about the chakras and figuring out what chakra I think my character most is driven from and things like that. But when I look at the notebooks, actually a lot of the stuff in there, it doesn't really resemble anything to do with the last one, why I ended up getting interested in about them. And some of them end up, in fact, quite empty. I mean, I can't even remember if I started a notebook when I did The Ferryman in London. I think I might not have. But there are other ones. And sometimes it can depend on the director you're working with as well, because they might bring more to you. Some, you know, really bring a lot of material to you and will help you and will send you books or poems or whatever that they think might help spark something. Other directors just let you go and do your process and don't really ask you any questions about it. And you just bring whatever you bring then to the performance. So it's kind of, yeah, it's all very influenced by those different factors. So I guess the research is always something that very much has to be done. And I love doing it. I really enjoy just gathering all the information that I can. I really do. But, you know, for some characters, it's really a question of like getting into their physicality. And once you've got that, then you can run with it. And with other characters, there are other things. One thing might just unlock it for you, and that's it. But I guess the one thing that does they all have in common is just a lot of preparation, but it just might not resemble one another. And I kind of don't. Every time I begin a new character, I think I've forgotten how to prep. and I'm worried that I'm not going to do enough. And I kind of think, well, where am I supposed to start from? But really just start. And then it kind of just takes off on its own. It leads you to where it needs to lead you to, I suppose.
One of the horrors of COVID time for me has been this realization of how here in New York, how I neglected the going to the theater. Like there was plays that people used to say to me, Peter, you have to go see this. It wasn't like, and I was like, oh really? Yeah. I was just talking to Andrew Garfield in two of his plays, you know, the Death of a Salesman and Angels in America. People were like, multiple people, Peter, you have to, and one of them was the ferryman. I mean, two people came up to me and said, you have to go see this play. And I was like, oh, really? Really? It's also about poverty and everything. But still, I could have scrounged and sold something or something. I mean, I waste so much money. But this has been, it's been a horror to think about all this and to talk to some of you people that were in these plays and be like, wow, I can't believe I missed that. But I want to talk about something, though. You talked about, you had a breakthrough on the play you did before that, apparently, The River, during rehearsals, that kind of led to your work on The Ferryman. Something happened during that changed the way you work. And I wanted to see if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think it was a conflation of lots of different events. You know, I think that first off, I was ready for that change to happen. And I think that that's kind of the most important thing. If you're alive to things coming into your life in a way that will change you, then that will happen. And it doesn't really matter what outside factors are there. If you're not alive to that change, it won't make any difference. And I think that I'd reached a kind of natural point in my career and in my life. You know, I think I was coming up to 30 and just kind of shedding a lot of the younger version of myself on a personal level, getting rid of the aspects of me that didn't work for me anymore. And in that, it then became a meeting of, primarily a meeting of minds between me, Ian Rickson, and Jez Butterworth. I knew whenever I walked into my audition for The River that the two of them were sitting there, and I had one of those magical auditions where everything just takes the conversation between all three of us to a different level that a quick half an hour meeting doesn't normally touch the sides of. And we were discussing music and the music that we were passionate about and poetry, and really got into the depths of what the play was doing and saying in a very short period of time. So that really made me feel like I was meeting two people who were going to be hugely inspiring to me. And that certainly was the case. There was something about the way that Ian Rickson brings you into the world of the play as a whole, and that really infuses your life in every way. He is one of those directors who really holds your hand through the preparation and rehearsal process. You know, he would send me playlists, even before I'd begun rehearsals with him. You know, I was working on another job in the theater, and I was getting like a list of songs and books and different things that he thought may or may not work as inspiration for me. And so much happened in that room in terms of the rehearsals that then bled into my everyday life, that I felt that for the 3 or 4 weeks that we rehearsed that play, that I was walking around in the world of the play. I felt like I kind of entered just a different state of being for a while. And I really, really loved that. That was where I decided I really wanted to live as an actor, that I wanted to be that immersed in anything that I was doing. And what that process told me was that in order to be that immersed, the writing has to be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And that it doesn't matter whether, because that play was going on for 3 weeks, I think, in the upstairs Royal Court. So in front of fewer than 90 people every night. You know, it's not like lots of people weren't going to see it. It wasn't going to suddenly change my career, or it didn't feel like it was going to do anything other than just affect me as a person and as an actor. And that suddenly I found myself 100% fulfilled just with that. And I realized that that's all I ever needed to do. I didn't need to go trying to think in the long term of a career. I didn't need to think about what kind of actor do I want to be? How do I want to be seen? The grand plans that you can have for yourself when you're about 20 can start looking like they're not coming off when you're hitting 30. And I think especially for women, that can be a real source of worry, and that, you know, perhaps you're not going to get to play the parts you would like to play in the rest of your career, and you might always be at a certain level. And I was having all of those thoughts, but in that moment of being so immersed in this beautiful, beautiful play, and we were only creating it for its own sake, and we were all just living in that dreamland for a while. That's where I found myself completely fulfilled and happy. And I realized that as long as I only went to work looking for that whatever else would fall into place would. But that it was kind of at that moment I stopped apologizing for seeing myself as an artist, and stopped apologizing for taking myself seriously as an artist, and actually began to accept that, you know, maybe I was that person rather than trying to be that person.
I want that for everyone. I mean, right?
Yeah, it provides such freedom. It provides so much comfort to me, because I am not in that perpetual state of what next, and what's it gonna do for me, or is it am I right or wrong here? You know, there's genuinely no getting it wrong unless you just unless you go after something for the wrong reasons. So you know, it gave me a real sense of security in where I am, and the ability to go out there and just fail and learn, and that would all be okay, so long as I was just always doing it in order to be part of the process. It really taught me to not be focusing on end game, and just be present and part of the process. And the process is the thing. The result is not the thing.
You said somewhere, secrets are the fundamental part of what will always draw me to a character. What is so important about secrets to the work and to what you think you can do with a character?
I think it's secrets and subtext. And they don't have to be active secrets, like somebody is hiding something from the other people in the play or in the show or whatever. It's like, what are they not? What are they admitting in the literal sense? And what are they stopping themselves from letting out? And that can just be as simple as somebody not knowing themselves very well. But at that point, it gives me layers to a character, and I get to decide what is being held back and what's being shown, in a sense. And I find this stuff that I get to hold back infinitely more interesting than the stuff that I want to put. It's you know, it's like watching, like the classic version being, or the simple version being, watching an actor cry. It's not interesting to watch an actor cry and watch the tears roll down their face. It's only interesting to watch an actor try not to cry.
Yes.
So that's when it hits you in the heart, is somebody struggling to be one way and or to to be what they want to put out there in the world, when in fact what's really going on with them is possibly going in the other direction. It gives attention then to the character. And I think that's real life. People are walking around with those tensions in them all the time. And I find one of the most fascinating things about human behavior, and therefore what I find really interesting in drama, is that it comes down to somebody's integrity. The drama in any given moment on stage or on screen, usually it's not like, are they going to live or die? That's not as interesting as, are they going to be able to maintain their integrity in the circumstances that they're, whatever that means for them. It's like the end of the Crucible. And he says, but it's my name. It's not about whether he lives or dies, or whether he's going to be imprisoned, or whatever it is. He in the end will not give up his name, because that's his true sense of who he is, and he needs to stay with that above anything else. That's the bit he's not willing to let go of. And so watching or getting to play a character whose sense of themselves is being compromised, and how they manage that is what interests me.
I can feel what you're withholding with Mrs. True all throughout the show, like moment to moment. And it's one of the things I'm fascinated about. So I need to just tell you that I love this show, and I'm not somebody that loves fantasy shows. I'm not somebody that loves a lot of the shows that people love right now. I avoid a lot of things. I was going to avoid this. I mean, I thought this was going to be another one of the things that I didn't like.
Superhero show.
Yeah. I love that this show punishes a half viewing, like that people like to do right now on their phone. I love how like you need to watch this twice. I just watched the first episode again, and I'm like, I need to watch every episode again now, because when I watched the first episode again, that I love. I mean, I remember thinking that in the first time I was watching it, I was like, this is complex. Even the comedy is complex, but this character, it feels like you were able to, and you tell me if this assumption is wrong, you were able to kind of build this in a way. It doesn't feel written at all.
She's not overly written, thank goodness. The writers have been very confident in just allowing her to be and not explain anything. And there will be some people who watch that and don't like not having things explained.
Good.
And
good.
Fine.
Good.
You're not our guys. Okay, go for it. I like watching things where things are being withheld. I like to know that I am going to get those answers.
Exactly.
But I like to trust the piece to just bring me there at its own pace, knowing that there are reasons for doing that. And, that was the thing that really struck me when I read these first 6 episodes, was that it was really relying on the intelligence of the viewer. And like you say, people who are going to pay fine attention to it. You can't watch this with half an eye on your phone. And it will lose you or bore you quickly if you do, because there's so much detail in it that like you say, merits viewing a few times, I think, and then once you've watched all 6, will merit going back to the beginning and seeing what you were purposely led to miss.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that is what attracted me to doing it. I'm also not a big fantasy or sci-fi fan, and I wouldn't have got involved in a straightforward like superhero show or something.
Right.
Great fun to do physically, and I love the aspects of the show that are that, because I have so much fun with them. But in terms of the acting, I'm interested, like I said, in what people are withholding. And Amalia is a woman who I think both for survival withholds things, but also because of her own very complex psychological issues that will get eked out in time. And by the end of this 6th episode, which I think by the time you're podcast airs, it will have been shown in the States. You know, we have the answers to where she's come from and who she is. And so what I'm really fascinated about next with her is how does she handle that stuff being out there? Because in fact, I think that she's so much more comfortable with secrets than she is with any level of openness. And I think that she'll actually discover in herself that it's a much harder place to be, somewhere where it's all out there and that you're open with people. I don't think that she'll handle that very well at all. And yeah, like I said, with the writing, that makes it much easier to be able to withhold, because she is not. There are no apologies made for Amalia, you know, in the show or even within scenes. She's never apologizing. Yeah. And I don't feel the show apologizes for her to the viewers. It's just going, yeah, just handle it. You don't know much about this woman. You're just gonna have to accept that. Right. And so for me, it's just about, it is about figuring out what she will reveal, what she is aware of herself, what is she not even revealing to herself, what she completely keeping shut in her own psychology, and just gently, but only, you know, it's like peeling back a layer of an onion or whatever, and then just quickly just placing that back over again as possible. You know, she's just this kind of very tight shut box. So much of it is just about being with her. It's certainly not about showing. That's in any character, preferably. That's the role of an actor anyway, is just to be in it and really not worry about what is being shown. Thankfully, with her, the less the better.
On the second watch, I was appreciating how delicate it was for everyone to kind of flow together, right? And this also goes to the chemistry that you and Anne seem to have. And then I saw an interview with you two, and it's like she loves you, and it seems like you love her. I mean, and I'm like, this might be it. These people actually love each other in real life. I'm getting that energy here. That's actually contributing to it. Is that insane?
No, it's definitely not. I don't know whether we just really lucked out or whether it was the fact that we allowed ourselves to go there more because we were in the process of inhabiting those characters and finding out about them. So we just really went for that with each other. Like, we just instantly trusted each other and were really, really open with each other in a kind of little team of two way. You know, I think that we were aware that that's what the story required. And so probably indulged ourselves in that more than you perhaps would ordinarily if you've only just met somebody, because we didn't know each other at all before we met in a chemistry read. But yeah, I adore Anne, and I adore acting with her because she's incredibly open. She's really always, always truthful. And so no matter what we are doing within a scene, I know that if I give her something, I know that she's receiving it. I know that she's open and listening being the thing that creates the greatest performances and yet is the hardest thing for any actor to do. And you find actors not listening all the time, and I find myself not doing it, and I have to remind myself because it's such a difficult thing. But I find she's always listening. I know by the way I will deliver something to her, by her reaction, I know that she has been completely alive to that in the moment. And so that trust is just there. And we know that with that there, nothing can go wrong. And I love that with the writing and also with the directing, and really this comes down to our crew, our camera operators, just so many different people, where we've really been trusted to just be and not show, that's actually quite rare, I find, in TV, particular genre TV, because everybody's so concerned about making sure that the story is being told in a way that the audience are spoon-fed it. And we have been, I think this is probably one of the first screen jobs I've ever done where I have not had people come up to me asking me to do more, to show more, to sell this moment more, whatever. I was never once asked to do more, because if you do want that, I am the wrong actor for you. But instead I had directors coming up and going, just the way that you just opened your mouth there, that slight bit, that just told me everything. And I'm like, oh my goodness, thank God people are paying attention to this stuff. And, so I think the fact that Anne and I have been trusted like that has really left us with the confidence to just really be natural with each other, and know that is gonna travel and read on screen. And I'm so thrilled that the general reaction does seem to be that our chemistry is something that really works, because that isn't something that we could force. We just had to let it be and hope.
The physicality, I mean, like there are some legitimate, like, hardcore stunt scenes, fight scenes, and you're doing them in a corset, the ones I've seen.
Yeah.
So like sometimes I see things nowadays and I'm just like, well, this isn't, that's probably not a real corset, because they probably just CGI'd that on. Nothing's real anymore. But no, this was a real corset.
I wish I'd be CGI corset the whole time if that was possible.
Was this something you were excited about doing, or was it like, how am I going to be doing this kind of acting work? I'm sure you're one of these actors that don't just want to get the moves right. You want to be your character doing these moves. This is an extension of the scene.
Absolutely. Yeah. Things like, with Amalia, she's often fighting people who are much bigger than her. And while she may have all the training and skill, nobody was going to believe that if I got punched that I wouldn't feel it, or if I punched, a great big man that I was going to knock him out. And so it was definitely a conversation that we had towards the beginning, and a conversation we're always having, and we're always trying to think up new ways of handling, is that how does she use her stature to her own advantage? And, it does become so much more about speed and ingenuity, and using someone's weight against them, and different little skills that she has picked up along the way in her very complicated life. And so that was something that I really wanted brought into it, because I was tired of seeing women in fights on screen who fought like men, and I wanted to fight like her, and I wanted to fight like she was in a corset, and so sometimes she is to, she's got to get rid of layers, for example. I think twice in the first 6 episodes I get rid of a skirt, because you can't fight in a long skirt. It's just impossible. Yeah. As I discovered very quickly. But at the same time, gosh, yes, I embraced the physical side of this wholeheartedly. I was really, really excited about doing that. It's not something that I've ever had much of a chance to do before. Little bits here and there, but not to this extent. And I had been a gymnast whenever I was younger. And so I had that kind of basic awareness of my body and how I could use it, and flexibility and things like that. But, I'd never fight trained really before. And so I wanted to get in there as early as possible. They didn't have to persuade me to come in 6 weeks before we shot the pilot. I think I knew I had the part 3 months before, and I was like, when can I start? I want to be a fighter. I want to look like a fighter. I want to do this properly. And, from the stunt team, I just got so much, training, obviously, but so they put so much faith in me, and they gave me so much confidence, and they really have, they've allowed me to do everything. And That's amazing as well. You know, I have had brief fight scenes in previous shows where I've learned this thing for weeks beforehand, and then on the day they just shoot it all with the stunt double, and you don't get a look in, and that's so frustrating. But I really, really wanted to be involved, and so they just had the faith in me to let me. And now it's, you know, it's one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. I'll go back to training tomorrow for the next 6, and I am just so excited. Yeah, I've discovered a whole kind of new level. And also the thing as well is about being a woman on screen. You're not often asked to put on muscle, or you're not asked to, you know, to be stronger. And so all of the hang-ups I will have had as an actress through my 20s about how I'm supposed to look, how I'm expected to be looked, it's all been completely reversed, in that right now I'm just indulging in this feeling of being fit and strong and healthy. And to be anything else would just simply not work for the job. And that's just such a huge relief.
I have a feeling, if I know you at all from just doing a little research, that after this show is done, which who knows, I mean, maybe even before it's done, meaning like between seasons or something, you're going to have this itch to go back to the stage.
Yeah.
I had this moment where I was at a play and I saw, and it was a very big actor, but he generally a film actor was in this play, and a part of the coffee pot fell on the floor, and he didn't pick it up, and I couldn't focus on the rest of the play. I bothered my wife about it on the way home. I talk about it still. I'm talking to you about it.
Yeah.
You have a story where in the Ferryman, you know, a glass broke. Yeah. And you spent all of and you loved it. You spent all of your time cleaning up this glass and doing all your lines. And so tell me, what have you learned to where that moment happens, you don't panic, where this gentleman didn't pick it up? Like, what's the difference there? What happened to you?
Yeah, there's definitely a time in my life where I also wouldn't have picked it up. But now I get ecstatic in moments like that, because I do fundamentally think that nothing can go wrong on a stage, because I don't think that an audience is there to see perfection. They're there to experience collective humanity. And so if something happens that shouldn't happen and the audience know that, the very experience of witnessing that and what happens next is the reason they're in the theater. So everybody at that point got to witness something real and alive and something shared. And that's why people are there. They're there to try and witness something that's alive, not something that, it would be like going to a tennis match and discovering that the players have figured out all the shots they're going to play each other beforehand.
Yes.
Yeah, it might be amazing to watch. You might still see Federer, you know, slide across the court and reach a really far away, you know, pass, or you might, you know, get to see Nadal hit the fastest serve of all time, but none of it would be alive, and it would be of zero interest to watch. And so it's the fact that you are there witnessing something pass back and forward, and whatever happens next, nobody knows. And that to me is when a play is at its best, is when it's alive like that. So it doesn't matter if somebody misses one of the balls. That's part of the game. It's part of the reason why people are sitting in their seats. It's a collective experience being a theater between the actors and the audience. And it's wonderful watching a film in the cinema with that, and that's all predetermined. Of course, you're aware of that. But that movie could still be showing in that room and nobody could be there to witness it, and it would still be exactly the same thing. But in a theater, if there's nobody in the audience, the actors aren't doing that play. They're not still just performing it that night. They need the audience to be there. So there is there's a conversation that's going on between them. And as long as that conversation is alive, I don't think the audience ever minds what that is. So the moment you see that actor not pick up that pot, you know that scene is dead, because that person is not responding to what's actually happening in real life on this, in front of them. So I loved it when the glass smashed, because then you get to see something actually happening. I'm not acting cleaning up the stage. I'm cleaning up the stage. I'm not acting my knees cut and blood running down my legs. It's actually happening. And then I have to search about, the set of the kitchen and see if the designer at any point has thought to maybe put some plasters or something in a pot, and, find something that I could kind of hold against my leg at the same time as trying to make sure that the potatoes were going to be peeled in time to go in the oven. And that's the challenge of running a kitchen in a huge household full of children. So at that point, I've just got that challenge in real life. And that's way more fun to watch than watch people pretend to do stuff.
Laura Donnelly, thank you so much.
Thank you. The pleasure it is to talk to you.
Our two characters are facing this big mission, and there's these massive stakes at hand, and they're doing it together. And I feel that with Laura sometimes, because we're like, oh, we're just, two Irish women who are, kind of leading this HBO series together, and we're facing it together, and it feels like a lot of unknowns, and it's been a mad 2 years with it all, and it, the stakes aren't the future of the world or whatever it is, but it still feels big to us.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Ann Skelly is an actor. She sat down with me in cyberspace to talk about the work. Do you have a typical first step that you like to take when you land the role to start to get into the character?
I feel like it's been such a while since I've started something new. It's been 2 years we've been doing the Nevers, and I've barely auditioned for anything since. But I think what I do is, I like to have a little notebook where I put in all the little bits and pieces I collect of a character. For the Nevers in particular, Penance is the character I play. Penance, she's an inventor, and I've no science in my brain, and I can barely plug plugs into a wall. So I really wanted to understand and see what that could look like, as well as how that kind of mind could work, because it felt very out of my grasp. So I looked at Leonardo da Vinci. Jesus, I was about to say DiCaprio, but Leonardo da Vinci, because I like painting, and I like, I'm more of a right side of the brain kind of gal. So I thought that would be an in, because of him being such an inventor and whatever that word is, omni-knowing of all these kind of different things in life. So I kind of looked at him, and I bought some National Geographics, and I listened to Victorian podcasts and stuff. You kind of accumulate a bunch of information from tons of different places, but I think you always just start with the script, really. It took me a while to actually figure out this character in particular, Penance, just because I'd never played such a light character or someone so close to me. So that was really weird and tricky. But with other characters, I've looked in books. Like if it was based on a book, I've read the book, which I actually wouldn't do again, because then you start playing things that just isn't a part of the show. And chats, I mean, a lot of things, you try to figure out things on your own, but a lot of it for me happens when I see what other people are doing. It all makes more sense because you're in a world rather than just you living in your own head a bit. You get to interact, I suppose, and implement.
You touched on something that I've been trying to put together, which is if you play a character that's too close to yourself, it's actually harder. Is that right?
I mean, there's definitely a different challenge to it. Maybe it is harder. Even in my notes, when I say something like, if I'm writing on the side of the script and I'm saying, I feel I am nervous about what she's saying here, I have to say she's nervous, because I would have naturally more sympathy with someone further away from me than myself. It feels self-pitying otherwise, and that's a hard place to begin from emotionally.
So interesting. Yes.
So I think it helps me if it's further away. It's a bit nerve-wracking when it's more yourself. And I don't know exactly what it is yet. It's actually even easier to act in a different accent. I didn't know that before. I thought the accent would be a technical obstacle, but it's actually far easier. So yeah.
And that must have been a challenge too, because you're in your own accent here.
Yeah,
right?
Which I thought would be a great thing. So I kept my own accent because Penance was Irish. It didn't specify where from. But I kind of wish I made a bit of maybe a further away decision or something. But it felt further away. But it is quite nice as well, though, I have to say. Again, not sure entirely why it's so nice to play someone that is also close to you. It's also quite hard. I think you just work in a different way. It makes it's like, I don't know, brushing with your left hand in the morning, or brushing your teeth with your opposite hand. It makes your brain just go a bit different.
Huh. You've given me the only semblance of a word that I can say in an Irish accent, which is prototype.
They actually told me to say it because I would have said prototype, because I would have had more of a, I suppose, a Dublin accent or a city accent in comparison. But they told me to say prototype so that people would be able to understand me better.
When I was talking to Daisy Edgar Jones, I was telling her that I have such a non-ear, such an American-like ear of not knowing the difference of like how amazing her accent was in that show, what everybody was talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's the thing with Irish accents. There isn't a huge amount of exposure of them. So it is, I would imagine it is harder for anyone's ear to be trained to what you're not used to hearing, especially an authentic Irish accent, which actually Daisy Edgar Jones does, like the perfect, most nuanced, brilliant Irish accent by someone who's not Irish. She probably does a better Irish accent than most Irish people, but I understand why it is so hard, because we're not accustomed to it. Like you're not prepared to hear what's about to come out of that person's mouth. Right. So I understand it big time. I don't hear it a lot on TV and stuff.
Yeah. And you better be preparing your American accent, because things are about to be happening in Hollywood, don't you think?
Oh gosh. It may or may not have anything to do with me. That's the problem, Peter. That's the problem.
I guess that's the way it is, right? That's the way it goes. What is Red Rock? Like, I mean, we don't know this here. Is this a soap opera?
Well, the funny thing about Red Rock was it did start as a new soap opera. A funny thing, it went through a couple of different growing stages. I think it went on for about 4 years. No, maybe 3 years and 4 seasons or something. But it was kind of a cop drama soap type thing that changed from half-an-hour episodes twice a week to 1 hour episodes once a week after Watershed. So it went through a couple of growing pains, which is an actual shame, because there was a great bunch of people on that, and they did actually do really quality work, given the 10 to 14 scenes we'd be filming a day, an episode in 10 days. So in that way, it was a soap opera, but it actually had a life here in England as well, which is funny. Actually, I think I've equally gotten stopped in England about Red Rock. as well as in Ireland, which is, I had no concept of that being seen outside of Ireland. So yeah, I don't know. But I don't know, I've never watched an American soap opera. I've seen the Spanish ones, where they get shot a few times, I really enjoy that.
The people that I've had on the show that have acted in soap operas, they have this, they talk about it being this incredible ground for them to do work on and to grow. And I'm assuming that must have been like that for you, like 10, 15 scenes a day. There must have been something that you kind of worked out during that you're benefiting from even now. Is that true?
100%. The way I see it, because I left school when I was 17. I didn't go to drama school. I got my second audition, luckily enough, and that was Red Rock. And Red Rock was that intensive experience I think people acquired in drama school, maybe. Like, it's that, those amount of hours that you spend working on, your job or acting or being in front of a camera, getting comfortable in the technical aspects of it all. And after about 2 years, I felt I actually got a bit too technical, where I'd be able to stop at the mark, look out the window, cry from my right eye, look, do all this. And I was like, I feel like I'm missing something though. I'm missing, I'm getting comfortable. And so I left. And I went to an acting for camera kind of program called Bow Street in Ireland. And I got that sense of total discomfort again. And yeah, I think I got a bit nervous early on that I was settling into my ways or something.
That's so interesting.
That freaks me out. But I do think it was a huge, huge benefit. Even though it was very hard at the time, I actually do notice now, I funnily enough, do really miss intense pressure on set. Like with the Nevers, it's obviously HBO and it's massive scale and there's all this budget and time. But with Red Rock and, Irish indie films I've done since, it's so much pressure. And I like that and I miss that. And I miss not being able to doubt myself for 1 second. Right. Yeah, I think I've always been instinctive because that's just the only way I've known. And so it's hard to then think about things too much. I don't know.
Right. Because when you start thinking, and I think I relate to this, that's when the real trouble comes in.
Oh yeah. It's not a good place up there. Best leave it alone.
You had said that the audition for the Nevers was the quickest audition, and it happens to be the biggest role you've gotten so far, and I'm imagining that has a lot to do probably with the entity that they gave you to play with in that room in the form of Laura Donnelly.
The entity herself, yeah.
Tell me about what that was.
Gosh, I don't know. I think so. I got the audition through my agent, my London agent, and it said in the brief, like, for HBO. That stressed me out. I was like, just don't tell me that. Like, that's not fair. Just not fair. And so I went into Nina Gold's. I flew back from Italy, where I was living, and I flew back to Nina Gold's office. Did the audition in her office. Was very nervous. Just I messed up a couple of times line wise, and I left, and I went okay. And I was down to very close to 2 other things, and so I didn't even think of it, And then I got called in for a chemistry read with the one they were hoping for who would play the lead in the show, and I just thought that didn't make any sense to me. Like, what do they want her to practice for auditioning other people? Like, what's going on? Which sounds like such bullshit, but
yeah.
I really was like, that doesn't make sense. And my agents were like, yeah, I don't know what's going on either. So we went to, yeah, I remember I was just pacing outside the building because I always show up about 20 minutes early with like 2 cups of coffee. And I was pacing outside, went in. I accidentally dressed the same as the curtains. Like right now, I'm dressed as the same as the wall behind me. I don't know why that happens. And me and Laura went through this new funny little scene. Like it was about 2 pages or something. And we just kind of, like, Laura fucked up her line and I kind of went, stop sabotaging me or something. And we had a little laugh. And I think Joss had to tell us to stop laughing so much. Like he was, it was just, I don't know, it was just an easy experience. And I was stressed that I wasn't that stressed. But just meeting her was just a light or something. It just made everything go by easier. But more than easy, just an enjoyable experience. And I remember leaving going, it's a shame. I'd really like to know her. I'd really like to meet her again. And then like 3 or 5 days later, I think it was 3 days later, I heard that I got it. I was like, this is just weird. Okay. I lay down on the floor for a while. But yeah, and it was just nice that, like, getting to work with her. It's just, she so loves the show itself and her character. And, so you come across people who are sometimes a bit embittered, or maybe they're they've been there, done that a bit. And she just isn't too cool to passionately give mega shits about the whole thing. And I love that, and it's contagious. And I want to do everything to keep that, I suppose, maintain the energy. I don't know. It's just, you want to match up to that so much. So I wonder, is there something there in that? Because people have commented on, like, the chemistry between me and Laura, which isn't something we've, I don't know if it's something you can actively conspire towards, but I was thinking about it because I get asked it quite a bit, and I was thinking, like, is it because we act well together? Is it because it feels so easy when we work together? I wonder, is that it? Because people can have chemistry and not get on, and we happen to really get on. Or is it because we're close to our characters? Is it because our own dynamic is pretty much the same, in a way? Like, what is it? I don't know.
I think I have it figured out. Well, let me say it like this. Laura said about you,
No.
she's incredibly open and always truthful. If I give her something, I know that she's receiving it. When I just listened to this part of the interview again, and I had like a revelation about this, because I was like, I mean, I didn't even tell you yet, I love this show, and I've watched it like 3 times, but I mean, mainly because some things I still don't understand, like, I don't understand. Yeah. I love that though. I love that. Watching it so many times, I'm like, why is this work so well, where it works on repeat viewings, what these women are doing? Why is that? Why am I laughing at you, Anne, like the 3rd time? Like, I've seen something. Like, why am I laughing? I'm alone laughing. Like, why is that still funny to me? The revelation was, if somebody's willing to receive, you're going to give more. The trust of the receptacle makes you give more. Like, I think that. I don't know if this is ringing any truth to you, but I think this might be what great acting is between people. If they know that it's going to land, they'll send a helicopter up. That's a weird metaphor, but like,
that's brilliant.
You like that? Okay.
Yeah,
because
I think that you've articulated something that everyone's been like, what is this intangible thing? And you've made it very in the world. That makes a lot of sense, because I do have that feeling with Laura, and I haven't said this before because I hadn't known to, you don't even maybe that's not, maybe I'm taking her for granted in this way, but whatever Laura does, I know it's right. And all I want to do is facilitate whatever she does. And I see her do that with me, which is because, I'm very conscious that it's Laura's story. She's our protagonist. She's our woman. And I don't like when actors try to crowd that space. So I was always very conscious of that, and I really just wanted to uplift anything that she wanted to do. How great am I? But she does that equally, if not more. Like, I feel like she wants me to have an opinion about things, and she will change what she does to make something that works for my character and my little part of the story, or a little idea I have. She'll change her idea of what it's supposed to be around that. And there's, obviously, I suppose, freedom there with her, like a little ping pong tournament that kind of feels like it's just, but like if it was gentle and kind, a badminton of ping pong, if you will. But she's and that very much feels like I'd do anything for her in a scene. And it does feel like, we've kind of said this once before, that in our two characters are facing this big mission, and there's these massive stakes at hand, and they're doing it together. And I feel that with Laura sometimes, because we're like, we're just, two Irish women who are, kind of leading this HBO series together, and we're facing it together, and it feels like a lot of unknowns, and it's been a mad 2 years with it all, and it, the stakes aren't the future of the world or whatever it is, but it still feels big to us. But so there's something to that maybe as well, genuinely wanting to support each other within scenes, because sometimes you do act with people and you go, wow, you're amazing, and what you're doing is absolutely brilliant, and it's so incredible and perfect. I wish I could be a part of it. I wish I could be in the same room as you. But but there isn't a desire to connect, which is I don't judge it as something bad. It's just there's a funner way to work sometimes in that connection. I love working within the connection to the other person. Laura does that. But I suppose, it's no criticizing of how anyone else would act. It's different approaches to different roles, to be honest. But I like the challenge of working with other people as well, other types, because it's difficult in its own ways, I suppose, to come across someone you go like, oh, I don't know how to match this, or I don't know how to be there with you, or I'm just going to have to find another way for me to tell the story or be in the scene.
Yes. And maybe through that, like, you'll discover things that you wouldn't have discovered when it's flowing right with somebody else.
Yeah, there's the confidence in that too, which is, it's trial and error, obviously. There's a lovely feeling in coming back, and maybe it's a particularly hard way for me to work around, but you do it and you found something else, and that contributes another weird layer to it all.
But what about with Tom Riley? Because those scenes are also very special to me. I mean, and there's a back and forth that feels very valuable there. But is it different?
Do you know what? It's different because it just is different. I think our characters' dynamic is different.
Yeah.
And I also think one thing what Tom does is he does every take differently. And I get it makes me a bit nervous. It's like, oh my God, like, am I going to just start laughing? I don't know what. So and he'll do every take differently, but he'll also be telling the same story. So it never feels like you're lost. It's just kind of exciting in that way. And it's like Yeah, Jesus, I don't want to even use this cliche thing, but it does feel a bit like a dance. Like
Yeah.
he does something and you have to react to it, and you kind of give something out, and he does something entirely different, and it's really exciting. I don't know where the
Yeah.
joke is going to be in the scene, because I'll read it and I won't think it's that funny, or
Right.
it's not supposed to be funny, and he makes it full of, I don't know, like this humor that's just in everything, and it's quite lovely, but also a softness and a loveliness that it's a lot of, yeah, it's just, and that's the thing as well I like about me and Tom's dynamic in the show, is it feels like you have a tiny little rom-com moment
Yeah.
in a very serious and very high stakes and dramatic and
Yeah.
fantastical world. There is a grounding of, oh, look at this lovely little moment, isn't that
Yeah.
nice? Or it's a lot of fun to work with Tom as well.
It's really interesting that when people have talked to me about how they like to do different something different every take, I never think about the other actor. Yeah, like you don't know if you're going to start laughing or not. Like that could be a whole other added layer of weird pressure and anxiety.
Yeah, do you know it? You just have to stop yourself, I find, sometimes from watching what's happening in front of you, because it's quite marveling. Is that a good word? Like
Yes.
it's so fun and interesting to watch, and you're like, how's he doing that? Like, where's that idea come from? I actually have no idea. And it's also incredibly embarrassing to be funny when you're filming something, because if no one laughs,
Oh, yeah.
and no one usually does, but on Tom's takes, the boom operator's shoulders does be shaking, like everyone gets a bit unsteady, but there is a huge embarrassment, because you've put yourself out there in a completely different way. Like, it doesn't feel like as well like you're running to keep up either. He does very much include you, which makes you feel better. But
I can't wrap my arms around, like, is some of this stuff on the page? Like, I want to just take one scene. Like, it's a very simple scene. Like, it's the scene where you're talking about amplification, in terms of the comedy of you having to, like, being forced to use the word amplify. And I'm just wondering, where was that born? Like, in you guys working it out? I mean, there's so many scenes like this. A lot of the comedy feels very fragile. And it's like, if these people weren't as good, and these moments weren't as flowing and as right, and the timing wasn't right, totally would be lost.
Well, if I can remember right, like when we're being directed, the directions can be quite specific. But with something like that scene in particular, me and Laura get very excited to add in anything that kind of indicates a history of something between the two characters.
Yes.
I think that's maybe where that is. It's like Penance is kind of fed up with Amalia just, giving shitty names to her brilliant inventions.
Yeah.
And it's the idea that they've, she already knows what it is. It's just kind of takes the magic out. And it's just a little deflating. So I think there's something.
But that's what you guys added. That is what it was what you're saying. That's not on the page.
God, I think it just in a certain way. I don't want to be like Joey Tribbiani here and say I write all my own lines. Because I desperately don't think that's the case.
Yeah,
I think we were firmly directed to a certain kind of joke for sure. But the way you do it is up to yourself. Like what you would find funny.
Right.
I think for me, when I read it and I think of Laura doing it, I go, I know that's, there's a chance to add something there, or maybe it's an instinctual thing, or, but also, we just get guided as well if I don't understand it, because there's times when I don't even notice there's a joke or there's something to play or investigate, because it is so richly detailed.
Yes.
So I love direction. You tell me to do anything, I'll do it, and happily, and I'll never ask a question, and I'll just be so happy you told me what to do.
Yeah.
But it's nice when what you would find funny and what you're excited about portraying between a certain dynamic between Laura and myself, or Amalia and Penance. I think that makes it a whole lot easier and clearer.
I heard you say that speaking of direction, that you really like blunt, to the point direction, and that scares the hell out of me, because I'm the guy that will talk for 4 days before telling you directly what to do, But tell me if this is totally wrong. Like, you're good, so you can take a blunt direction and kind of translate it to something that you can work with, that takes the sting out of, like, whatever that is. And I feel like actors do this a lot. Like, even if you were given a line reading, you probably could do something with that. But when somebody's blunt, when somebody just tells you faster, or you're not getting that, it's this, and there's emphasis right here, and all this stuff that's like so real clear and so simple, and so, is there anything that's like taken away the agency that you have to, like, if you did work 4 days and did 700 takes, if you eventually got to where that point, would it be different? I'm not even sure if this makes any sense, what I'm saying.
No, it does totally. And I think one thing I figured out from hearing you there is it's probably just trust.
Yes.
I find it really hard to listen to any kind of babying or any kind of I think I don't trust whether or not they're going to be honest with me in what they want or think, or what they think I'm capable of doing. I think maybe that's a part of it. What I want to hear is, I suppose, a kind of, what is it? I want people to trust that I'm not going to be personally, take something personally, and that I can do my job. I don't know if it's something about being a young woman or having the certain personality that I do that is quite meandering, and it is quite, I'll make a joke every 2 sentences and not ever talk about the weather. Like we won't even find out what the weather is outside because I'm just too busy in tangents of jokes and in this constant loop. But so I think when it comes down to work, I'm probably the opposite personality of what I actually am, which is very concentrated and often quite serious. So I think maybe it's something to do with that. And I think there's something to do with, I just like the idea that someone will feel, if they said, you're doing too much, that I'll be able to take it down the next scene. And that doesn't waste time. I think maybe it's a time management thing too. It's just like, I need to know what's happening. I want to be included. And I think I start to, I don't think I do my best work at all when there are tricks being used, like, oh, I think we've got that. Great. So let's do it another way where you're just less shit. So I just need you to be like, be less shit. And I'm like, all right, I'll try, like something like that. But I think, like, for example, Rose Plays Julie is a film that I did. It's an Irish independent film written and directed and edited by Joan Christine Lawler. Who are 2 Irish filmmakers, and they are really close friends of mine now. But I remember when we were filming, they would talk and they'd be abstract, and I'd be biting at the bit, and I'd be like, nearly having a meltdown, going like, but what is the thing? What is the thing? And they're like, it's more about like the feeling of this, and then this has happened, and it's all out to, and that works too. I just need to trust people in order to be able to work like that. I think it's a personal thing. It's definitely not, I mean, I don't know if any other actor has the same experience or feeling, but I get a bit afraid of tricks.
Last question. Did you feel the thunder that wasn't?
Well, do you know what? In a way, yes, because that day I found it so hard to do that scene because it was really late and we were having a lot of special effects issues, and I was so nervous about the fact it's quite like a funny kind of charming scene, and I didn't want to play it like I'm trying to get a laugh. And when the crew finally, not finally, but like after a couple of takes, when no one was laughing anymore and no one was, laughing in between takes or whatever it is, I got so nervous and I let out a fart. So I'm guessing that's the something. And my heart dropped and I actually had a panic attack on set.
Wow.
Because I looked and straight away I looked at the boom guy. No one heard it. But I was so mortified and devastated about this thing. And so yes, to answer your question, I did feel the thunder that wasn't. And I also heard it. So there you go. Acting 101.
Ann Skelly, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham, formerly IFP. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
I promised I'd never tell that anecdote, but here we are.
I feel honored that it's on this show. You've blessed us. Thank
you for receiving.